Sony 35mm G Master 1.4. This lens has great image quality, but now I'm seeing why this thing was on sale this holiday season, because the autofocus isn't that great. Now when I'm usually doing videos out in the field, I usually end up using the spot meter autofocus, because if something's just slightly in the corner, the camera will switch over and focus on that item that's just barely this much in the image instead of the subject. So that's why I prefer to use the spot meter. Now this camera's autofocus is great if you're using the breathing comp, but even with that, you're no longer shooting in 35mm. It crops in at a 1.2 crop, so you're technically shooting at a 42mm equivalent at that point. And if you add active stave, put another 1.1 crop on top of that, now you're at 45.5mm equivalent filming wise. Because even at 35 with just active stave, it's a 1.1 crop, so you're pushing into 38.5mm equivalent. But I got a 35 to film at 35. So when you're filming in full 35, the autofocus is a little bit more fidgety, more spastic. Now I compare this to the classic Sigma 18-35 EF mount lens with a MC11 adapter, and its performance was better than this G Master. Now you can get that 18-35 EF lens for $620 brand new, and the adapter is probably 200 bucks, so you're looking at like 800 and something dollars. At the 35 equivalent, you're still getting just as good autofocus, if not better, at the 35mm point than the G Master. Now this lens has been out for nearly 4 years now, and I've yet to see any firmware updates on this lens. Whereas the 24mm had a firmware update 3 years after its release. But considering this is going on 4 years, and Sony hasn't announced any plans anytime soon to give this lens a firmware update, which they really need to at this price point. Now I don't mind the breathing of the lens, because usually when you're filming in motion, you don't notice the breathing. And I also noticed a lot of the autofocus tests I've seen online. I've been looking at the corners, and they have the breathing comp on when they're doing their autofocus test, which this thing does autofocus better with the breathing comp on. But when you want to film in full 35, it's just so jumpy. And when I could pull out a third-party lens with an adapter and it could perform better than this lens, I mean, give me a break. That shouldn't be the case. This should be Sony's native to its Sony system. It doesn't make any sense. The only thing I could think of, the reason why they had this thing on sale over the holidays, is the same reason why they had the A7S III on sale before they decided to ditch that system altogether. The old classic Sony pump and dump and let the losers deal with it. I'm at a point where I'm not gonna pay any attention to the big name camera review guys anymore, because they always lead me down the wrong road. They're never right about anything. They never tell you the flaws, but because they're getting paid to hide the imperfections that they don't want to announce to the people. There's only very few names when it comes to reviewing stuff that I actually do pay attention to, which would be Marcus Pix, because the guy just loves to film with cameras. Camera Conspiracy, Casey, because he's just on a whole nother spiel over there. And I mean, I've looked at every review from 3 years ago, 2 years ago, a year ago, and nobody mentions these flaws in this lens. This is just a bit of a rant I've had, just because when I was out filming, I come back, I look at my footage, and I'm seeing all this spastic hopping around, and then I do a little pan view and just a regular autofocus, and I'm still getting a lot of jumps. I want to be able to take a 35 and shoot in 35, not have to crop in the 42mm to get the autofocus working the way it should be working. I mean, the whole reason why I got this lens in the first place is because the edgings. When you use a zoom lens, there's a little bend to the edges, and with this lens, there's not. The lines stay pretty damn straight. And considering I filmed some stuff for architectural groups, they don't want to see that bending on the barrel side of the outside of the lens, which is the main reason why I got the 35 instead of the 24, because the 24, you know, is a wide angle, so there's going to be a little bit of bend. And I figure this is a great middle ground to be far back and yet still get a landscape view. So if you already got this lens or whatever, understand this is workarounds. You gotta adjust your autofocus motors constantly depending on what you want to shoot to get the focus, and it takes a lot of trial and error to get the focus to work with the motion that you're trying to work with and trying to accomplish with this shot, which is kind of disappointing, especially when you want to do some gimbal work with this thing. But I do enjoy the image out of this lens. When everything's exposed right and I throw it in the color grade, I barely have to do anything to the image to get it to where I need it to be. Tell me what your experiences have been with this lens if you happen to use this lens. But these are some things that I think should be addressed, which haven't been addressed. And with that, thanks for watching and just keep on filming.